Radio Scotland.
To post-pandemic politics, there are calls this morning for the so-called virtual parliaments to live on long after the coronavirus crisis has passed. Kezia Dugdale is director of the John Smith Centre at the University of Glasgow and with us now. Good morning to you.
Morning, Gary.
You commissioned a UK-wide poll on public attitudes to the way politics has been conducted over the course of the pandemic, but mainly focused on the House of Commons. What sort of things did people tell you?
Well, first of all, they like the idea broadly of virtual parliaments and remote voting because they can see the benefits of it. And then when we ask the public, what do you think you as the citizen get out of this deal? They say that they think that MPs will get more done as a result of having remote voting and parliamentary proceedings online, particularly MPs who are furthest removed from the parliaments that they work in. So it's not just about rurality, it's not just about the representation of rural areas, it's this idea that MPs representing Glasgow or Edinburgh, Inverness, further afield, spend 4 or 5 hours a week getting to and from work, which is 4 or 5 hours a week, which could be better spent. And of course, there's a big dimension here around diversifying the types of politicians we have. So women and those with caring responsibilities are particularly keen to see virtual parliamentary proceedings and remote voting stay for the long term.
I suppose the big question is how much of an MP or MSP's work actually happens in Parliament and how much of it is constituency based.
Well, that's right. And, it's not black and white. It's not a binary decision that you'd only ever vote virtually or you'd only ever be physically present. It's about having that option. And the reality is there are lots of ridiculous scenarios now where we have MPs or MSPs being dragged from maternity wards or from their cancer bed or from a crisis in their constituency around a job closure or a factory, for example, having to go to a parliament to cast a vote because that vote is tight. If you imagine those scenes again around Brexit, where people were queuing for hours only for a vote to fall and then, another set of hours before another vote would take place, or indeed the budget vote in Edinburgh where people are voting digitally but they have to physically be in the building to pass a budget in the Scottish Parliament once a year. It's clear from this evidence people don't think that's the most effective use of a politician's time.
And it's not just about effectiveness. I mean, you mentioned there, women with children particularly. And even at the last election, we saw some politicians declaring that they were standing down. They weren't seeking re-election because they felt their family life, particularly women, was being adversely affected by the travelling and the working hours.
Yes, and at the John Smith Centre, we exist to make the positive case for politics and public service, and we want to pull down the barriers that people face accessing it. And yes, you're right, when you look at the last Scottish Parliament, across the political parties, Aileen Campbell for the SNP, Jenny Mara for Labour, Ruth Davidson for the Conservatives, all saying very publicly it is hard to balance family life and to be a politician at the front line doing the very best that you possibly can do. Something like this could help more women stay in Parliament for longer. We saw at the last general election in 2019, certainly, that women were leaving politics with fewer years served at a much earlier stage in their lives than men were. Let's understand that and try and create a situation where we can overcome those barriers so we get a better politics overall.
Well, some of those barriers, of course, are just attitudes of the politicians who've done it one way for a very long time. I mean, I'm thinking specifically at Westminster, there was quite a lot of resistance to the hybrid idea of people not actually being physically in the Commons.
Yes, that's right. And the public aren't wholly convinced this is the way forward either. We've noticed this in the poll. So 4 in 10 people are worried about the impact that virtual voting might have on accountability and scrutinising governments. But at the same time, another 40% of them just aren't sure how it would work in practice. So, I'm not saying it's a done deal. The public are totally sold on this idea. But there is an essence of value clearly in this poll showing that the public like the idea of MPs and MSPs being able to use their time more efficiently, especially if that creates a more diverse set of politicians at the end of the process.
Yeah, I wonder whether things need to improve technically as well. I mean, we've watched some of these sessions and, we have technical difficulties sometimes here and, we have a whole department of people who deal with the technical side of things. We've seen, politicians not being able to be heard sometimes, or there have been concerns over the security of votes, for instance, if it's done remotely.
That's right, but these are the issues that every workplace in the land is grappling with at the moment. I mean, I'm sure we've all had those hilarious moments in Zoom in our working life over the past 12 months.
You're on mute.
They can be overcome. Let's not let a technical hitch get in the way of a bit of progress here. If this could really work and ensure that our parliaments look like the country they seek to represent because they're more accessible, I'm sure we can get over a few technical hitches along the way.
I mean, ultimately, I presume this poll is about influencing the decision makers.
That's right, and I'm keen to see politicians debate it and discuss it and see how they can get it to work in practice. Just yesterday on Twitter, you had the Glasgow Central MP Alison Fulis talking about all the balances she's got to make in order to both get to her place of work, cast the votes, and represent her constituency properly. She's a big supporter of this. Equally, you've got Wendy Chamberlain, a relatively new MP for the North East of Fife, Liberal Democrat, arguing for the benefits she's seen of this system as the chief whip for the Liberal Democrats. People across the party see merit in this idea, but it'll take them all working together to make sure that this doesn't disappear when the COVID pandemic finally leaves us.
Thanks very much for speaking to us this morning. Kezia Dugdale, Director